All right, for our special guest next, it's not me. I'm Ben, for those who haven't met me. I want to give a quick intro to Ohio's 51st Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, former Army Green Beret, a fellow Ohio State alum. He also just recently introduced a proposal to accept Bitcoin for business filings within his office, so I'll let him speak more to that as well. But without further ado, Secretary LaRose.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here, and great presentation. Thank you for that, and really talking about how the United States is and should remain dominant in Bitcoin really dovetails into what I want to talk about, and that is why I think Ohio should be a dominant state as it relates to Bitcoin. And that's something that really has been a journey for me for a while. I would say 10 years ago, I was one of those people that was like crypto curious and reading everything I could find. And as I've moved into the office of Secretary of State over the last few years, I've been wanting to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment for the fees that people have to pay when they incorporate a new business or do other things with our office. And maybe it's a good thing, but it's just part of me. I don't have a lot of patience for like bureaucratic BS, and I kept getting these answers like, no, you can't do that. That's a bad idea. Don't do this. And so finally, I just said, all right, well, we're going to move forward with this. This is something that we're going to get done. And what I learned is that we have to go through this sort of convoluted government process where we have to get permission from this thing called the Ohio Board of Deposit, and that's run by the state treasurer. So then I had to go convince the state treasurer to do this. Check mark. He's on board. All right, great. And then I had to convince a majority of this state board of deposit. All right, next check mark, because just 2 weeks ago we got their permission. And so now we're in the RFP process to actually get the firm that'll be on our website where you can actually make the payment that'll transform it into dollars so that we can collect it for the state treasury. So that's the place that we are in this process right now. I would say that by this fall, the Ohio Secretary of State's website will be the first website in state government that has the ability to pay in Bitcoin. Now, here's the whole thing. I don't think that there are going to be thousands of people coming to pay for their business filing fees on the Ohio Secretary of State's website. But what I do believe that there may be like dozens, and half of them are in this room, right? But what this will help do is legitimize this to people. This will show that Ohio is a place that is pro-Bitcoin. Ohio is a place that is pro-crypto, that we're leaning forward on this, that we want to be a dominant state. I want to shout out Andrew back there from Ohio Blockchain Council, who's doing amazing work and been great to work with. It's great to have you. And so, why I'm here, and as I was thinking about this as we were going through your presentation, because kind of like a little bit of preaching to the choir. You're telling a bunch of pro-Bitcoin people how great Bitcoin is, but it's our jobs then to like go out and evangelize, right? Because it's the people outside of this room that need to hear this. And so I've been sort of working through that. I'm not going to name names because I'm not up here to embarrass people, but as I've been trying to convince state government leaders to do this, I've heard some kind of dumb responses from people. I've had people say to me, very senior elected people in state government, like, what's next, LaRose? Do you want to accept pesos on your website? Like, different thing, not what we're talking about here. And so really this is about showing that Ohio is pro-crypto, that Ohio is pro-Bitcoin, and that we're a place that wants more of these great businesses that you saw in that presentation that are going to lean forward on this. And so that's the timeline that we're working on. And again, why me? I'm the guy that runs the elections in Ohio, so I'm not necessarily the first person you would think of. I am running for state auditor, and so God willing, if I'm able to do that, then I would have some involvement in this as well in that next position. But, why not me, right, was kind of my answer. Like, somebody's got to take the lead and be sort of the first one that does this and shows that this is something that Ohio's embracing. We're all about it, and let's move forward on it. So that's my presentation. I would ask you to spread the word about this. You're going to see on social media, in the news over the next couple months that we're announcing this. It's happening. Maybe tell others about it. Spread the word that, hey, listen, Ohio's a state where it's happening. I know we've got people from all over the U.S. like Denver, and we've got people from around the world like Poland, I think, right? So I got to tell you, we're accepting applications for new Ohioans, and it is 75 degrees and sunny year-round, and we're a pro Bitcoin state. So come move to Ohio. I'll move you to the top of the stack. So anyway, one other thing, there is a crypto reserve, Bitcoin reserve bill that's moving in the state legislature right now. There's a guy named Steve Demetrio, state representative from Northeast Ohio. I've signed on as a proponent of that. I wrote up some proponent testimony and all of that. I'd encourage you all to spread the word about this as well, because again, we in this room are kind of the evangelists that need to tell everybody else that this is a good thing, and this is something that Ohio wants to be dominant in for many, many years to come. Any questions for me?
How would you?
Yeah, go.
How do you? How do you incentivize somebody to want to pay their fees with Bitcoin?
Yeah. So it's not necessarily that we incentivize it. We make it available, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to do. And I've explained it to people like this. You go on my website right now to incorporate a business. You want to start an LLC, an S corp, a nonprofit corporation, any kind of entity. You pay $99. I give you articles of incorporation. You may pay with Visa or Amex or MasterCard or whatever else. Well, the state's not actually extending credit to you, right? We're getting paid instantaneously, and that goes into the coffers of the state budget and all of that. It's the credit card company that's extending you credit. Well, what we're going to be putting on our website is a chance to pay in Bitcoin. That's going to be handled by the processing company. We're going to get paid out in dollars. So anybody that's concerned about that, it's not going to be like there's any kind of float time or whatever else on it. It's going to be instantaneous. And so people that have concerns about, is the state going to get their money? Yeah, we're going to get it in good old US dollars, and that's great. But we are going to incentivize it by putting it out there as just one of the options. There's not going to be like penalties for doing it. It's just going to be one of the options when you go to pay on our website. And again, the hope is that others will do it. Like maybe the Ohio Department of Natural Resources will be taking Bitcoin to buy a hunting license or whatever else. Pay your taxes eventually through the Ohio Department of Taxation, that kind of thing. And we're going to show this is nothing to be afraid of. And it's not. I think the other thing that we all know, let's just be blunt about this, among some of our government leaders and whatever else, they just don't get this yet. It's this like, oh, is that fad, or is that just that thing that's on the dark web for bad guys? Like, no, this is something that's real that normal people are doing. Diverse groups of our fellow Ohioans are engaged in it. They're using it as a store of value, as a way to make money, and a way to invest for their futures, right? And so sort of normalizing it for them and showing them that it's a real thing is part of what this is all about.
But you guys are going to switch it right to USD.
We will, for the purpose of accepting that into my office's budget or whatever, right? Now, separately, there's a bill right now to create a state reserve, right? And that's a good thing. And we know the kind of things that we need to be as a country and as a state to be sort of pro-crypto. There needs to be wide acceptance of it. There needs to be a predictable sort of regulatory environment. We need to fight off bad ideas like central bank digital currencies and that kind of thing that some people still think might be a good idea, unfortunately. So yeah. Yes, sir.
Could you tell us more about what you know about building a state reserve around Bitcoin?
Yeah. So the bill has been introduced. There's a certain set amount that they would look to. Andrew, do you know more about the Demetrio bill on the reserve? Maybe you can probably speak to this smarter than I can.
Yeah, it's in committee right now. There's a threshold for market cap for investment, so over $750 billion, which basically means Bitcoin only at this point. There are some methods to introduce a way to accumulate this without being direct taxpayer dollars paying for it, so indirect or revenue neutral ways to fund this. We would expect to see that move probably in the fall, I think at the earliest, but it is a significant step forward.
But like nothing happens in the state legislature just because it's a good idea. It's got to be both a good idea and have people backing it and talking about it and sharing it on social media. So the more that you guys can talk about that, creating the state reserve and accepting payment, it's a good thing.
So,
yeah.
A simple question for your office center: are you going to use the Stake and Shake Lightning payment model?
I guess I'm not familiar with this.
You're going to have to Stake and Shake yet? And try and pay in Bitcoin?
I haven't,
So,
no.
so it's really cool, and I'm sure more than half of this room has already done this. I've done it. I went the first day. It was so cool. You can go to their kiosks now, where you can pay, either by credit card or cash. And they have a third option there now, where you can pay with Lightning, Bitcoin,
Oh, cool.
which is, I can explain to you afterwards, but it's a very simple way to. It's a very simple payment rail.
Okay.
That would work beautifully in your office.
Now, like most things in government, we make it a little bit complicated in that we have to go out for an RFP, and so we're doing that process right now. So we're requesting proposals from.
Yeah, you're right, but
Yeah.
the protocol is the same.
Gotcha.
You might get different people who are going to get you there, but
It's called Lightning.
Right.
Yeah, good. I want to check it out. Let me give you an example of kind of the bias that we have to overcome too, though. I did a press conference with the state treasurer to announce that we're going to start accepting Bitcoin. And naturally, there's members of the press there, and in the front was this reporter that's like writing fiercely, and she's like, all right, I got him. I'm going to ask him the gotcha question. And she throws her hand up. Andrew was there, and she's like, so, Mr. Secretary, do you own Bitcoin? And I'm like, that's not a gotcha question. Like that, yes, I do. I believe in this. And so my meager savings that I have with my family, I've invested some of that in Bitcoin. But that's like asking anybody that's voted on the budget if they own dollars. Like that wouldn't even be a thing. Why is that somehow controversial? So yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
A few times tonight you've used the word crypto.
Yeah.
And I think in this room, when we hear the word crypto, we think of everything but Bitcoin.
Gotcha.
It's crypto. Does that mean you're going to accept like Solana or Ethereum or any of these other coins in the future?
Starting with Bitcoin. I don't want to close the door on that if that's a thing that we want to do in the future. I don't want to say this is exclusively, but our plan is to start with Bitcoin. But once I get the authority to do it, I want to have that authority broadly enough that we could expand that to other currencies in the future. But we're going to start with Bitcoin. Yeah. And if I've used the wrong terminology, I apologize. I've been
It's not the wrong terminology.
Yeah.
It's just more inclusive of,
Sure.
of what I think most of the room would consider maybe not as valuable of a token.
And I'm trying to be inclusive in the sense that it's hard enough to get permission to do this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to have to go back each time and get permission for different. We're going to start with Bitcoin. That's the one that is mainstream and accepted and widely used. And if there's others that make sense in the future, then we want to have the opportunity.
Between you and me, that's the only one.
That's the only one that matters.
There you go. Other questions? All right. Well, oh yeah, please.
So you want us to get loud about this so we can make this happen? You're saying social media is the best outlet?
That's a good place. I'll tell you what, I talk about the hierarchy of effective communication. I'm a former state senator, and so the most effective way to lobby is eyeball to eyeball. And if you don't know your state rep and you don't know your state senator, get to know them. Honestly, there's one state rep for every 100,000 Ohioans, right? There's one state senator for every 300,000 Ohioans. So get to know them. They're in your community. If you can't connect with them, that's probably a sign they're not doing their job well, right? And maybe you should replace them. But so it starts with personal communication. The next best way is phone call, email, that kind of thing, original letters. Form letters are not great, right? Mass emails where it's you put no thought into it and 1,000 people sent the exact same email, that doesn't really do much. So, and then, yeah, social media is a great way to contact. I'm on all the different platforms, just at Frank LaRose, FrankLarose. So you'll see me talking about this among 1,000 other things that I talk about. But that'll give you, a place to see when we make the announcement that we're going to start accepting it, that kind of thing. And I'm a River client, I should say. I have the habit that probably many of you do, obsessively looking at the Bitcoin price multiple times a day on the app, and so appreciate that. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Quickly, just talk about your journey. What do you know about Bitcoin? When did you get into it? Why are you doing what you're doing now?
I think it started with an article in The Economist magazine 10 years ago, right? And I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting, right? And I started reading about it, and then I learned about blockchain technology in general, distributed databases and all that kind of stuff. And then what the hell's mining? How does that work? And then started sort of digging into that and learning. I got to visit a mining facility here in Ohio, and it's okay, it's a big data center, right? But learning about that, and then got to the point where I had enough savings that I was willing to allocate part of my savings to Bitcoin, and so bought into that. Met with Andrew and Ben and some of the other guys from River, and I'm like, all right, it's time that we get this done. Like, again, I'm the guy that runs elections, so it's not necessarily my wheelhouse, but somebody's going to have to step up and say it's time for Ohio to be a leader on this. And one of, I think, 5 or 6 states in the country that accept Bitcoin on state payments, and so like, all right, we don't want to be a laggard anymore. Let's go ahead and move on this one. And so I just decided to do it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I heard Vivek Ramaswamy at Bitcoin conference
Good.
talk and running for governor. How do you think, if he were to win, you would kind of accelerate Bitcoin in Ohio specifically?
So I'm a big Vivek fan. We're friends, have been for years. In fact, we go running together, which is kind of fun. If you haven't met him, he's an incredibly impressive guy. I'll tell you, I go running with him like 5 miles. I'm not physically tired, but I'm mentally exhausted because it's every mile's a different topic. Like, what are we going to do about the electrical generation crisis, and how do we fix public education, and what do we do about eliminating the state income tax, and all that. But one of the things that he often talks about is Bitcoin and wanting to make Ohio a pro-Bitcoin state. I think that he's the kind of guy that is willing to be a disruptor, that's willing to lean forward and do the things to really make, this sounds like a theme because it is his campaign theme, but a state of excellence. He's like, we're not just going to make Ohio marginally better. We want to make Ohio the best in the country. And we were that, right? 100 years ago, Ohio was the place where all the wealth was, all the sort of the leader of the last industrial revolution. Well, I think with bold leadership like that, we could be the leader of the next current industrial revolution. I think that Bitcoin is a big part of that. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How did you get Palmer lucky to come to Columbus?
Yeah, and I admire his Hawaiian shirt collection. I would love to say that I had some role in that, a minor role, some things that I did when I was in the state legislature on economic development, like creation of things like Jobs Ohio and that kind of thing. But Ohio makes sense, right? And these tax incentives, the things that the government does, are not going to be the deal maker, right? If you are competing with 4 or 5 other states, then they could be the thing that differentiates you, right? But it's not going to be tax incentives that is the sole reason. So I would say the reason why Ohio is on the radar for site selection people that are doing projects like this is we've got a lot of things by accident that other states would love to have. Great location, right? Geography. We're within 1 day's drive of 60% of not just the United States, but 60% of North America's population within 1 day's drive of Ohio. We've got a stable environment. It's a little cold in the winter, but we don't have hurricanes. We don't have earthquakes. We've got, maybe a tornado every now and then or a snowstorm. We've got a workforce. We've got, and this may sound old-fashioned, but we've got this Midwestern work ethic where people are willing to get off their butts in the morning and go do a job and work hard and expect to be paid well for that. But we've got that as well. We've got great academic institutions. We're kind of where if you chart cost of living and quality of life, I think we're where those two axes cross. We've got a reasonably low cost of living compared to the coast, but we've got a high quality of life. And so I think that those are a lot of the things that they look at. And then smart policies at the state level. We're working to keep taxes low. We're working to streamline regulations. Of course, we've got to protect the rights of people, workers, and the environment, and basic common sense things where the juice is worth the squeeze. But we don't think that government is the solution to everything, and that's part of it as well. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.